What's your favorite mushroom? Lion's mane. Is peer review toxic according to the Cointelegraph article? I read that this morning. I was flying back from Dallas and I was just looking at it. And I was like, what kind of an idiot writes an article like this? You guys, they're grasping at straws. The hatred of Cardano is so strong at Cointelegraph that they have to now attack the entire institution of peer review to delegitimize us. First off, peer review is specific to your field. The peer review process for mathematics is radically different than physics, radically different than biology, radically different than gender studies, radically different than computer science. Computer science is the most industrial of all of the peer review processes, done at conferences mostly, not journals. People actually see each other in person and they're much faster. There's much faster results. And a lot of the papers, they always ask, where's the implementation? Where's the industrial application? Not just the theory behind it. Okay, so you have a faster paced thing. You have more intimate, tighter knit relationships. You tend to be collaborating with people in person, and there's a desire for industrial applications. There are no politics there. There's certain academic politics. There's certain publishing circles that may sometimes, not like others, but, it's double blind. We don't know who's reviewing and they don't know who's submitting. The names are ripped off the papers. If you're real clever, you can kind of just by reading the prose and you've been around a long time, get a sense, oh, that's Agalos's paper, or that's John Katz's paper, or that's an Ara Jewell paper, or a Silvio Macaulay paper. But for the most part, it's a pretty good system and it works very well. And there's really no case of systemic bias or catastrophic failure that people can point to. There's a lot of peer-reviewed computer science papers that never go anywhere. They're one-offs. They appear in a conference, but nobody does any follow-up work. So what you do is you take a look at derivative work and citation count. So for example, Ouroboros has been cited over 1,000 times. And there's a lot of derivative work, some of which we didn't even do, and a lot of people implementing and building it. Ouroboros Praus is in market. It's running a $40+ billion cryptocurrency. People are using it. Okay, so we have both in-person and we have third-party review. The point of this process is that you have people who are not associated with the product, who have no financial incentives one way or the other, who are truly independent, reading the paper and saying the things here in the paper are novel, interesting, and seem to be accurate. They are not necessarily right. They're not necessarily going to change the whole world, and they seldom do. But somebody independent has looked at the math, looked at the stuff, and is qualified to do so, and has said that this is something that's new, novel, and interesting to the body of literature. That's why a lot of these conferences only accept 10 or 20% of the papers submitted to them. Now, that's very different than, let's say, a gender studies peer review, which has really sullied the entire reputation brand of academia. And there's cases of where people wrote fake papers and those papers came in and they went on the Joe Rogan podcast, talked about their entire experience of doing that. And instead of the industry self-correcting and saying, boy, we have some serious problems, we need to have a discussion, they went after the professors who did that, which just shows you that there's not a lot of integrity in that type of a system. But why does anything like that have anything at all to do with computer science peer review? It's a completely different discipline and domain. They don't talk to each other. They don't interact. 9 times, 99 times, 999 times out of 1,000. So we chose it because it doesn't slow us down. It gives you guys independent validation that the things that we're doing are somewhat reasonable. And by citation count, you can see if the academic community agrees or not. And you also can see by derivative works, what type of innovations are done. Furthermore, for a journalist, this is why I was so surprised to see this trash coming out of Cointelegraph. For a journalist looking at this, how the hell do they know the paper's right? Everybody's got a paper. Papers. I got one right there. Here we go. This is a paper from Ben Gortzel, The General Theory of General Intelligence, a Pragmatic Pattern and Perspective. Look at all those pages. And, let's flip it open to a random. Oh, there's some mathematical formulas there. There you go. Oh, there's some diagrams there. Oh, yeah, there's some prose there. How the hell do we know it's right? Honestly, some guy with a degree in English is going to read this whole thing and know what Ben's talking about. This is the culmination of 300 papers and 30 years worth of work. So they have the time to vet that, the skills to vet that. The point of the peer review process is that somebody who's not Ben's friend, who's outside of his circles, who's a domain expert, who has the time and the credibility, has read it, looked at it, and said, okay, there's something here. There's something interesting here. It's like fact checking an article. That's the point. So why wouldn't journalists love peer review? It makes their job a lot easier. They say, well, these crypto projects are making a lot of claims about random number generation and the fact that they're secure and so forth. How do we know? They say, well, did anybody check the work? And what burden of proof and evidence exists there? Well, there's this 400-year-old thing that all science came from. You trust it for the medicine in your body, for all the airplanes in the sky and the microchips and the electricity and all these things. So like there's this corpus of science that exists for this stuff. And that's kind of how we do it. Did anybody use that? Did anybody build from that? No, we can't use that. No, what we should do is say a project should only be judged if they've written code, deployed the code out, and nobody's broken it yet. And here's the thing, guys. The people writing the code are usually paid up front. And if it doesn't work, usually it's discovered 6 months, year, 2 years down the road. And the people who suffer are the people who use the product, who are not necessarily the same people who designed the product. That's like saying monorail, the Simpsons episode. You pay the monorail guy up front and Homer gets to be the conductor. I mean, what kind of idiocy is this? But apparently that's what Cointelegraph thinks. Although they said his views don't necessarily represent the views of Cointelegraph, but okay. Maybe I can write an article then about it. Yeah, it's just noise and garbage by people that don't know what they're doing. The other thing is, where do you get a decentralized brain from? I can't do this forever, guys. My scientists can't do this forever. If we're real, we're going to be here in 100 years. So who's going to be doing this 100 years from now? If we incubate this into the academic world now, it's going to grow like a weed, and the science of Cardano will be an academic discipline, which means people will get their PhDs and do papers and write papers on the NSF's dime and DARPA's dime and the EU's dime and the government of China's dime, the government of Japan's dime, for centuries on the things that are important to our ecosystem, not because we paid them or asked them, but because they want to get tenure. And it's interesting. And by the way, that's linguistically neutral, culturally neutral. It's all across the entire world. That's what you get when you open up the peer review world and you make it attractive and sexy to do academic research in a cryptocurrency and show that you can get tenure from these types of things. It's just simple. And that means you get more decentralization, less cult of personality around a founder, and no reliance on a lone genius trying to figure out all this shit. Doesn't that sound good to you? Honestly, think it through. Or we could just write some code and hope the code works. Ugh.